scary movie. Swallow this.
Back again. You have made Body Talk movies one of my highlights of the week. And good to see you looking good, healthy, and, rocking out.
Yeah, rocking out in church, as you can see. Nomine Padre, et Filii, Spiritus Sancti. I'm fascinated by Christian history. So I thought, being that we're going to cover, you guys and dolls will see which movie, this would be appropriate.
Quick reminder that we have a 888 number, which will be flashing below. And of course, John and I will be answering the questions at the end of the video, and you'll see the time code below. So, John, I guess we'll just jump into the heart of this. What are you drinking?
I'm having which I'm really a fan of, Screwball peanut butter whiskey.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I dig peanut butter.
It's not bad. It's pretty freaking good. Like, really, I'm really enjoying it, to be honest.
I made some Black Russian tea. I'm going to go for a sober August, I guess, or at least from alcohol. Anything else is up for interpretation. And we go from there. So I got this cool little mug my buddy brought out when he came and visited a few months ago. So.
Oh, that's a cool mug. So it makes up for the fact you're drinking tea, yeah.
I was trying to find a balance, so.
There you go.
Hello, my friend! Hey!
That brings us to 1990s. Love the 90s, my friend. The Exorcist III. John, I want to know your relationship with this movie because I feel you probably have a little more of a personal connection, being that I know that you're a big fan of the first, as am I, but I think you told me before, it's like one of the most important movies in your existence.
Well, I think the original Exorcist is one of the best, if not the best, really, up to this day, horror film ever made. Oh, horror, drama, whatever you want to call it. Also a film that had so much impact. Actually, it's funny. The Exorcist and The Omen, both films sent people back to the Bible. Like, Exorcist 1973. And The Omen, I forgot what year it was released, but it had both those films had such an impact, sent people back to the Bible. I still believe The Exorcist, the OG, is one of the best movies, like in my top 5 best movies of all time, not just horror, of all time.
I think it's still effective to this day. And in terms of being unsettling, and as I've mentioned before, I'm at that age now where the most unsettling thing is back pain, taxes, and, more time behind than in front. So the fact that anything could still be that effective, especially this many years later, dude, it's awesome.
But The Exorcist is a really fascinating franchise because the first one was so strong, it was hard to follow up. And then they went to Exorcist II by John Borman, who hated Exorcist 1. So not really the right guy to hire. The Exorcist II would be the king or queen of the so bad it's good movie if it wasn't so freaking boring. But there's some like genius nuggets here in that movie, man. Like there's an exchange about, and I paraphrase, I might have the name wrong, but I'm going to put the clip here on Principle with Richard Burton, the great Richard Burton, about Kokomo. Kokomo? ¿Connais pas Kokomo? Kokomo?
Kokomo?
Yeah. Me no comprende por qué. So it was really nice that, William Peter Blatty, who wrote the book that inspired the movie, The Exorcist, and he's from Georgetown himself. And he heard about the case when he was younger, like the case that inspired, which was a boy, actually, that inspired the original Exorcist. And then after part 2, he got inspired again to write a proper sequel called Legion. And eventually, as you know, Morgan Creek got a hold of it. And there was a lot, which we're going to address, a lot of, ins and outs, a lot of obstacles, a lot of bullshit. This is Morgan Creek we're talking about, right? This is a studio that shot, they pulled a Weinstein, Remember when the Weinstein, they did Cursed with Wes Craven?
Twice.
He delivered his final cut and you know what? Let's scrap everything. Let's do it again. Same thing happened with Exorcist IV, which I was on the set of Paul Schrader's Exorcist IV. And then they shot the script and Morgan Creek's like, nah, we don't like that shit. I'm going to redo it. So the Ken Schrader brought in Rennie Harlan, kind of did the same movie, like kind of like the broad strokes are the same, but more like commercial, more like a McDonald's. And Morgan Creek shot a movie twice. So with The Exorcist III or Legion, you had to expect some bullshit, and bullshit did go down. But before we get into that, what are your quick thoughts about the film, like in terms of how you feel about it?
I love it. It's my favorite. I mean, Exorcist sequel. I know that doesn't mean anything. But in a previous video, or maybe even just you personally, I don't know. I forget. We talk a lot. I mentioned how I at this point, because Exorcist is just so iconic, the only way to do a proper sequel is to actually, you got to do something like very different, which I know some people wouldn't like. I think this is it. This is how you do something different. Every time I revisit it, I like it more and more. And as I've gotten older, I realize why is because the strength of this movie is that it's a talking movie. And I've grown into a person that those are like my favorite types. People talking in rooms, dude. I love it.
And our loved ones die, and your God goes waltzing blithely through the universe like some kind of cosmic Billy Burke.
Bill, it all works out right.
Obviously, that only works when you have a script that holds up and actors that could just run with it. But at this point in my life, and I rewatched it a couple of days ago, actually, I think I like it the most I've ever liked it. I mean, I love it. I'm more fascinated about this movie now than I've ever been. And I knew that they messed with it, but I did a little research. I had no idea how much because, and we'll jump into this, I've never seen the director's cut.
I always love this movie at a young age, today, but I'll echo your sentiment. The more I watch it, and as I get older, every time I watch it, I like it even more. I think it was really, I don't want to compare too much with part two, but I got to bring it up. With part two, it's almost like Borman did not understand the material. He did like
I agree.
esoteric, I don't even know what the fuck to describe that fucking movie, but he was totally off base. It's almost like Borman felt, oh, you know, they made a movie with like big special effects. I don't want to do that. I want to do something like, you know, I don't know, Kumbaya or some shit. You know, it feels like a relaxation tape or something, you know? But you don't have to, and this is what part three did so well. You don't have to try to match the practical effects, the impact that the gore scenes and the effects had to tell a good story. What you need to do is capture a similar essence and communicate it in different ways. That's what this movie did. What part three did, where part one was not subtle at all, part three is all subtlety. Where part one is in your face in terms of scares, in terms of effects, in terms of gore, and part three, last act aside, went the complete opposite way. A piece of paper being blown in the wind, a score that's almost totally absent and replaced by whispers and, you know, shit like that, you know, that's really gets on your skin. A really deliberate, slow burn pace, a camera that will stay static now and again. Instead of pea soup, you have just visually upsetting imagery, like a religious statue with the head cut off, or I'm not going to start naming everything. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it. But Exorcist III was really smart. It did exactly the opposite of what part one did, but while at the same time still retaining the same kind of spirit, the same kind of I don't know, same kind of spirit. I'll go with that.
Well, I'm going to say going forward, though, I'm going to say spoilers because I'd like to get into the specifics. Dude, I wrote down basically what you said, so let me just rephrase it in one way that I like. This new, to match the original, would just be seen at best as slightly below. That's the best you could ever hope for. You're not going to equal it. You're not going to top it, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, we need to find out the tone. I think it matches the tone of the first one in a different way, but it understands that sort of like existential dread and sort of the walls closing in. In fact, to the point where they show nothing. They don't show any of the murders. They don't show the action. They don't show the aftermath. They will show a blanket and a statue that's head's cut off. And then we just talk about it.
Well, the entire movie, I mean, you know, we organically got here now, so let's address it. I mean, George C. Scott's playing Kinnerman, who was the police detective from the first film, The Exorcist, who was played by, I forgot his name, Cobb, LJ Cobb or LG Cobb, or, you know what I mean? That guy.
Oh, I know he plays. I don't know the guy's name, but I know he plays Scott because
But
he
he
says, I
passed
saw
on.
his body at the stairs. Yeah.
So George C. Scott, took over. Then we had the character of Father Dyer, played by Ed Flanders, not related to the Simpsons character. Yeah. I'll stop right there. C. Scott and Flanders, their chemistry, their banter, which was two actors that obviously are on together, was one of the biggest pleasure of the movie. And they're just on like two titans of acting bouncing off each other. And that applied again when George C. Scott versus Brad Dourif as Patient X, aka possessed Father Karras, in that cell. And that's the magic of this fucking movie, is that you're putting George C. Scott and Brad Dourif and let him talk for fucking 20 minutes. I'm in. You got me by the couillons, bro. I'm like, wow, you could pea soup this, that, not, dissing the OG at all. But the fact that this film was able to keep my attention with an iron fist through talking is a feat in itself. And you know what's funny? Fucking George C. Scott, and that's how, what's it called? The Razzies, right? They're called?
Oh, the anti-Oscars.
Yeah. He got nominated for this movie by the Razzies. Yo, Razzies. You see this shit? Yeah. Get to know it well.
I got old enough to kind of realize the Razzies are just kind of like frat boy douchebags.
All right, let's move on.
There's three talking scenes that I absolutely love. We don't have to go into them, but I just want to bring them up. And talking at the movie, after It's a Wonderful Life, they discuss this carp. And it's sort of an odd just conversation, but again, it kind of delves the personalities of both. They're both kind of grumpy. They're both sort of like 3 days away from retirement. And again, I've always mentioned this. It's my favorite archetype of character. George C. Scott is literally my favorite kind of character ever made. I love these people. There's the scene at the restaurant. I think it's one of my favorite scenes. I wrote down a couple of lines that I really, really liked. George C. Scott is basically saying that life is pointless and that, there's nothing here. And he names all the stuff. And I was like, ooh, George C. Scott hitting hard. And then Dyer's like, Bill,
it all works out right.
When?
At the end of time.
That soon.
And they had this little bit of philosophical, religious discussion, and but immediately put away because like he doesn't want to give an inch, and the father is kind of at the end's weight of himself. He's like, whatever. The Oscar-winning performance, well, I guess besides George C. Scott, is Brad Dourif in that scene. And I wanted to say something because it's one of my favorite lines, killing Father Dwyer, and he says, inferior vena cava.
Or superior vena cava. It's a matter of taste, I think, don't you?
I totally agree, and I'll take this opportunity to toss a bit of trivia your way, but it was always meant that Patient X is Father Karras, possessed. That was always in the Legion book, in the theatrical cut, and in the director's cut. But Jason Miller, when they first started developing the movie, Jason Miller, who played Father Karras in the original, was a hardcore alcoholic, and he had what they called the liquid brain. So he couldn't, it's a fuckload of dialogue. He couldn't memorize all the lines. So they said, fuck that. We're not going to go with Mr. Miller, and, we'll hire Brad Dourif. So then they shot the movie only with Brad Dourif. So then when the reshoots came up, imposed by Morgan Creek after a test screening of Blatty's cut, that's how they're like, you know what? Let's just get Miller to come in for little bits, show, because that's how now we have, it's Dourif, it's Miller, it's Dourif. And Miller usually comes up when his character, Father Karras, kind of comes up. Then he comes up as Jason Miller, and there's such little bits he could handle it, So that's how that came up. I'm sure you know this, and maybe you guys and dolls know this too. When you do research for a movie, especially an old movie, you get a lot of conflicting information. You'll read here it was one way. You'll read here it was another, kind of like the same way, but another way. In development, that was the plan. That's what I.
That's cool. I like that they brought him in, even for small pieces, because it adds to the story. I'm saying, I like, even though it becomes a little work explaining, it would be a negative later on, but I like that they don't leave it up to interpretation. He literally says, I got into this guy's body right as he died.
Yeah.
And I have to live in flesh. I can't possess a lawnmower. So he says, I had to fix and basically take 15 years to get this stupid guy back to normal.
We must operate through neurologic systems, brains that function, and your friend's was nearly past resurrection.
They explain why we have an older version of the priest and how he's there. Like, it could have just been like, well, I possessed him. It's like, yeah, but how did he get on the ground? How do you, like, he was obviously in a morgue. So them explaining that, like, he got his body, climbed out, and then has been in this insane asylum, sort of like regenerating, is kind of an interesting answer.
Let me go about it this way. When I first saw The Exorcist III, I read about it in Fangoria. I saw a picture. I always remember this picture of a priest holding his own head in his lap, which never made any of the cuts. So I've always been fascinated by that imagery. Hopefully I could show it to you right now. So when I first saw it, and then it's a slow burn, subtle, low-key film. And then at the end, boom, out of nowhere, Father Morning comes in and Rambo's his way into there. And there's gore, face being peeled off the ceiling, and an exorcist and fucked up imagery and everything. When I initially saw the film, I was like, what a tone change. From low-key to, fucking fireworks, Hollywood fireworks, which was, as you know, part of the reshoot. When Scream Factory put out the director's cut, I watched it. Then I went back to theatrical cut, and I appreciated the ending more. I actually, for in a rare moment, agreed with the studio. I think it was the right decision to make, to end it like that, because in the director's cut, it just ends with George C. Scott shooting him. That's it. Boom, done. Very underwhelming. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Dourif's performance in the director's cut and Dourif's performance in the theatrical cut are two different performances.
Knowledge.
Pride in your work.
Pride.
Did you know, for example?
Both rock, by the way, but it's not the same performance.
I actually thought the ending really worked. One, because I think the exorcism makes more sense at the end than just shooting. I agree. I think that's low key. Even that part was sort of low key. Like, it wasn't as, it was kind of quick, like he's being crucified, they come out of the ground, and then it kind of quickly cuts back like a minute later. I remember it being a lot more. I came out of this thinking like, oh wow, it was more subtle than I remember. I thought it was in your face and just intense for like 20 minutes, but it wasn't.
Before we get into negatives, are you aware that this was Jeffrey Dahmer's favorite movie? Actually, the franchise is like part 1, 2, 3 was his favorite franchise, but Dahmer would often play part 3, and he was actually inspired by what they call him, Gemini Killer, right?
Yeah, Gemini Killer's
Gemini Killer,
Dorf, yeah.
Which he himself was inspired by Blatty by the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
So Zodiac Killer inspired the fictional Gemini Killer, which inspired the real life fruitcake Dahmer. But that was one of his movies. He would play it on TV, even with his victims and stuff like that.
I mean, it's a great movie, but it's quite talky. You feel like if you put something in front of your victims, it'd be some more flashy, really good,
I read something like fucking Dahmer was something where contact lenses to look like Brad Dourif possessed, and
that's creepy.
So, any negatives?
I didn't like the dream sequence.
Well, Fabio took me out. It's Fabio, man. I can't believe it's not butter, bro.
I can't believe it's not butter.
I would say him and Sam Jackson. I was like, Sam Jackson? And again, I am watching this later in life. I guess here's my problem. Literally meant to be sort of like weird and just sort of bizarre. And though I can appreciate that, and I think William Peter Blatty is a very good director. He like, there's a lot of cool shots in this. I have a lot of them written down. That though was silly. So this is something I almost could see Terry Gilliam doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
But in this movie, all I kept thinking is like, I know you want a weird dream, this sort of, tip your hat of Father Dyer dying. Maybe at the time this worked, but right now I was like, it's kind of corny and it's taking me out. Why is Sam Jackson over there and why is Fabio over there?
Okay, so hypothetically, let's say it wasn't Sam Jackson, it was just some other actor, and if it wasn't Fabio, another actor.
Just as bad because it looks goofy. It looks like Terry Gilliam's doing it, which is fine. Yeah. I love Terry Gilliam.
Have you seen Blatty's ninth configuration?
I have not, and it's he's only directed 2 movies, so and people love that one. So
I personally couldn't get through it.
Really?
So it's very Gilliam Lynch-ish.
Oh, interesting.
which, by the way, has some weird connection with The Exorcist, because in the original Exorcist, I call her Reagan. Everybody else has been calling her Regan, but I call her Reagan. Reagan talks to this astronaut dude and kind of like predicts he's going to die. And that astronaut dude character is one of the leads, if memory serves me right. I could be wrong. In the ninth configuration. I couldn't get through it. I bring that up because in that movie, he's kind of like unhinged. Like the dream sequences in Exorcist 3 is pretty much the entire flavor of that movie from what I remember, because I couldn't get past like 3 minutes of it.
I like that stuff. But I mean, well, okay, interesting. Because I know that's connected because it's a part of like Blatty's like religious trilogy, I believe, right? Isn't that like Exorcist, that, and then this? I mean,
yeah, they're all connected to the OG Exorcist. So all that to say, one of the things I really liked about the picture is that Blatty has a very almost like auteur approach to filmmaking, very almost like independent, a bit ballsy. I mean, we didn't mention, you know, what one of the key scenes, a scene that a lot of fans remember to this day, is very bold, is, you know, that static wide shot. And I think, I don't remember, there might be like a slight push in as we go through the shot, you know, and then the nurse passes by and then that jump scare with the, you know, with the scissors. That's that, you wouldn't see that shit in a, you know, Blumhouse movie. This is a fucking, you know, art move, you know, to stay static. And then, so he brings almost like a indie vibe to a big studio picture, which I like. So a bit like Mini Lynch meets Mini Gilliam. So I don't know. I really liked his vision and the way he approached the material. Very restrained and very mature, but also very out the box. You know, when the studio is not there, you know, pushing him when he's left to his own device is very out the box, which I really like. You know, the statue of Christ opening its eyes, you know, which we're seeing in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Is you know, an imagery that'll be stamped in my brain forever. Before we wrap it up, I think we got a couple. Let's address at least two of our viewer voicemails.
Hi, you guys. My name is Maurice Jackson from the south side of Chicago. I've worked with Warner Brothers since 2007. As the travel assistant to Judge Greg Mathis, the TV judge. You guys do an amazing job. I've been following your show now for about 2 years. When I discovered it, I went back and watched everything that I could. Maybe a year and a half, almost close to 2 years. But I think you guys are amazing. Recommendations. I am a movie buff. I would watch a lot of movies with my dad growing up. I'm going to be 40 years old next week, so this is like late 80s, early 90s. My dad kind of made like a compilation VH tape for me of different movies, different scenes. I would watch movies with him. He knew I was into action. But anyway, on this tape is Commando, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Lethal Weapon, the original RoboCop, Ghostbusters, and Dragnet. If you guys could do any one of those movies, man, it would just make my day, man. Because this is the first VHS tape that was ever mine. It has my name on it. And I'm 40 years old, and I still have this tape to this day. So if you guys could maybe do one of those movies, man, that would mean so much to me, man. You guys are great. Keep doing what you're doing. I've been spreading the word to a lot of people in Chicago and LA, because I'm back and forth between the two about you guys' show. So you guys have a blessed weekend. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Mr. Maurice Jackson from the south side of Chicago. It's awesome, man. I'd like to ask you maybe off camera where exactly you live, because that is my old hometown. But yeah, man, I mean, obviously I'm going to have John jump in, but I'm going to say one, awesome tape. Two, the fact that you're talking about Judge Greg Matthews brings me back to all my my youth. You know, it's like that Jerry Springer and fucking Ricky Lake, right? But yeah, man, you are the best. I love it. That brings me so much joy. John, now let's do this together.
Sure, for sure, man. Maurice, man, first of all, thanks for following us for 2 years. So that's pretty much how long we've been doing this shit. You know, first on the Joe Blow Horror Originals channels, then that didn't work out. Then we started our own channel. Now we're doing that. So thank you for the support, and thank you for pimping and promoting. You know, you said you were talking about the show, you're pushing the show. So thank you. You know, we really appreciate it. your tape, I mean, God bless your dad, bro, because
All right.
what is it? Commando, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills
Ghostbusters,
Cop, RoboCop,
RoboCop.
Dragnet, and Ghostbusters. You had a good dad, man, or you have a good dad. I'm not sure if he's still with us or not, but you have a good dad. Had a good dad, that's for sure. Definitely, if I had to go by the list, we'll definitely do RoboCop, right?
Yeah, we did RoboCop too. One of my favorite franchises of all time, personally, is Lethal Weapon. I love it to death. I've seen it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So, not that I'm not,
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
oh, fuck off.
4 is still fun, but
4 is better. Far superior than 3. 4 is a great ending. I'm going to fight you.
4 is better than 3.
Hands down. Hands down.
Oh, bro.
Hands down.
It's on, bro. We're definitely gonna do RoboCop, and we're definitely gonna do Commando, and now we're definitely gonna do Lethal Weapon 3 versus Lethal Weapon 4. What an asshole. Maurice, thank you again. God bless you. And let's move on to the next one.
Yeah. Maurice, favorite pizza place? Let me know in the comments.
Hey, Lance and John Rigsby here, just calling in to, I had a couple of thoughts about some suggestions for movies to cover on the show, if they haven't already been covered. One of two. The first one I thought of was Seven from 1995 with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. Some people say it's not a horror movie. I usually challenge them right away and say, it isn't. Go back and watch it again and remind me how many times your jaw was left open throughout the film, especially the first time you see it. So I thought that would be an interesting one to talk about. Another one occurred to me is one that might be up your alleys if you haven't already covered it, is Friday the 13th Part 3, whether it's viewed or in 3D or not. My argument for this one is it is the Jason sequel where Jason is probably his most evil. And I know that that's weird talking about a guy who in every movie kills people in numerous violent ways. I would argue that he is not just physically a brute force of nature in this one, but he's also psychologically torturous, particularly to our final girl. There's a reason he picks the location in the movie he picks. He recalls it because that's where he assaulted her. He remembers that he goes there. It's questionable as to whether or not he knew people were there or were going to be there when he was there. But when he finally has her chase with her, he definitely wants her to know it's him, and he knows who she is, and he wants her to know and makes a point of letting her know that because he knows it was a traumatizing thing. So you don't quite get that so much in any of the other Jason movies. So I thought that was an interesting aspect to that entry. But anyway, just a couple of suggestions or ideas. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to catching the next one, guys.
Okay, John. Real quick, I guess to answer his question, I absolutely consider Seven a horror movie. I actually would say most thrillers tend to actually, I would say, lean into that. This especially, absolutely.
That kind of goes back to, horror fans are funny, man. When Silence of the Lambs was, nominated for Oscars and everything, all the horror fans saying it's a horror movie, but the Oscars, of course, didn't advertise as they were nominating a horror movie. Remember Get Out? What did they nominate it at? Get Out was
it was like a comedy or something.
Best comedy or something,
something weird, yeah.
So whatever. So, mainstream cinema will call Silence of the Lamb a thriller, but as a horror fan, I'll call it a horror film. And Seven, to me, is a horror film.
Absolutely.
But other horror fans are saying, no, it's not a horror film, it's a thriller. It's like, dude, who gives a fuck? Yeah, you know what, Justin? At the end of the day, in my humble and useless opinion, who gives a fuck? A good movie is a good movie. Is Seven a thriller? Is it a horror film? To me, it's both, and it's a great fucking movie. So, conversation is done.
I've made the argument, and I don't know if a lot of people agree with me, probably not, but people call it now elevated horror, but when I was a kid, we called it thriller, which is always just like a little more dramatic, a little more subtle, just a little more chill. That was a thriller, but it's still a fucking serial killer going around killing people. It's a horror movie.
Yeah, and in terms of Friday the 13th Part 3, which we have not covered, it's funny, Justin, you bring that up, because if I think Part 3, I remember some key scenes, like the handstand kill, which always, mark me. That was, or the eyeball thing on the prosthetic head, yeah. But I also remember when Jason, who had his fun with the final girl a long time ago, and at some point, he's chasing her, and he kind of lifts up his mask and has this like demented, mentally challenged, I think is the word that we use now, face to it, and it gave me the heebie-jeebies. I'm like, ugh. He's kind of like saying, "Remember me, bitch?" That's what he's saying, and it is very unsettling for a Friday the 13th movie, which are not really usually unsettling, So yeah, man, well played, sir, and we'll definitely tap it down the road.
I've always loved 3. 3 is my favorite of the first trilogy, at least. I got to be honest. I kind of trust you if you think he's the meanest. I'm trying to fight you in my head. I feel like 5 he's meaner, but it's not him at the end. So I guess that would be the twist. I'd have to kind of rewatch it with that in mind. But 3 is one of my favorites. I own it. I have the 3D DVD with 3D glasses. I obviously have it in the Shout Factory Blu-ray set. So, dude, it's a banger. I would love to cover it someday. Probably, I would hopefully say October or Friday the 13th. That lands on a Friday. Then, yeah, me and John should cover it.
So, what about you guys and dolls? Exorcist 3, theatrical cut. If you've seen the director's cut, which one you like better? If you've only seen the theatrical cut, let us know what you think about it below. Yay, nay, in the middle, whatever. With that said, guys and dolls, I'm going to leave you with a quote from the book Legion by William Peter Blatty. I read the book a long time ago, and the one thing I remembered from it was this particular quote, which is in the last chapter, actually pretty much at the ending of the book. Highly recommended for you guys and dolls to read the book, by the way. But the quote is, Kinderman ends by concluding that he believes that the Big Bang was Lucifer falling from heaven, and that the entire universe, including humanity, are the broken parts of Lucifer, and that evolution is the process of Lucifer putting himself back together again as an angel. Yo, you know what I'm saying? I thought that was pretty thought-provoking, really. I'll leave it at that.
Welcome to the end screen. Because we have our most popular videos up here, our latest videos over here, our modern reviews up here, and of course, the subscribe button right here, guys. Every little bit counts, and we do appreciate the support.